passed earlier this week. But since I understand we're trying to keep to a very tight schedule, what I'm just going to let you know is that there are copies in the back if people would like to grab more. They're being, I'm sorry, they are being passed around. Great, excellent. The most important thing I can tell you is that this passed unanimously. This is not something that you should have to applaud. And that was kind of the conversation I was having while we're waiting. If I have just a few moments to speak to you, what I want to do is I want to take this opportunity while we're in church to confess. And I want to confess that I am ashamed. I am ashamed that I am an elected official, and that this is the most that I have really done, and this is a piece of paper. I'm ashamed because I know Barbara Mikulski, and I know Ben Cardin, and I worked for both of them. And I'm ashamed that I have not gone down to Washington and done what I should have, which is lain across the doorway into their office and told them that it is not a matter of how politic your actions are. It is a matter of survival. I will take a few seconds to speak to the cost of this war to my district, really to the city. I understand that we've already spent roughly $1 trillion. There are estimates that say we're moving on to $3 trillion on this. And if you break it down just very straightforwardly, that works out to about $60 billion for Maryland. And when I think of how every day I have people with great ideas for great programs coming to me for new things that aren't being done, when I get the reports that our water and sewage infrastructure needs $1 billion worth of work over the next 10 years, when I am told that our schools have close to $1 billion in capital repair needs, and we have in the tens of millions set aside to do that, that's when I say, if only there was a big pot of money somewhere else that we could use to fix our city. And it turns out there is a big pot of money, and it's being used to fix somebody else's city. Now, if it was somebody else's city in Pennsylvania, or Michigan, or California, I would grumble a little bit, but that's part of what being a member of the United States is. But these cities are in another country, and we're repairing them because we blew them up. And I would like to ask you for, not forgiveness, but I would like to ask you for acceptance, that I realize that it is not enough to simply know this needs to be done, and not enough to just vote for a resolution, but that it's important that we all do everything we can to end this war as quickly as possible. And if that means embarrassing ourselves by laying down on the floor, then we should do that.
Thank you all for coming. Even though we're on a tight schedule, I think I want to take a moment to express the somber nature of this evening by remembering the 1.2 million Iraqis who've been killed, the 3 million who've been injured, the 4 million who've been forced to leave their homes. I think a moment of silence for these people whose lives we ruined needs to be thought about. This is a somber occasion, and on this occasion I want to focus on something that Senator Obama said. I think maybe the most important thing said in the campaign about the Iraq War, and that is that he wants to end the mindset that got us into this war. Now, he hasn't repeated that statement recently. He didn't repeat it in his speech today. But I do think that is the most important thing that has been said. And I think I hope he will talk about what that means in the future. I hope that other candidates not tied to the corporate duopoly, like Ralph Nader and Cynthia McKinney, will also know what it means, because we need to understand what is with the American mindset that leads this constant war mentality, this constant military machine. And I think there are some key foundations I want to point out, some key steps we can take that I want to highlight. First key foundation is war profits. We know that we have had an ongoing military machine since the World War II. Dwight Eisenhower warned us about it. In fact, while the economy is struggling, we've seen a 20% rise in defense stocks. We've also seen big oil doing quite well with this war. ExxonMobil had record profits for any corporation last year, $17 billion. In the last quarter of last year, a record quarter of $5 billion profit. This is the war machine working. And we see Halliburton and KBR getting their no-bid contracts to rebuild cities that we destroyed. Profits is one aspect. Second, we cannot forget the right-wing Israeli lobby. Now, I don't blame Israel for this. What I blame is that we use Israel as our unsinkable battleship in the Middle East. And those are not my words. Those are the words of Alexander Haig. Unsinkable battleship in the Middle East, and we will do whatever we can to protect that battleship so that we have a base of operations in the Middle East. And the Israeli lobby uses its power well to ensure that. Third, imperialism for cheap resources and cheap labor. We don't like to think of ourselves as imperialists, but in fact the United States is an imperialist country, maybe most likely the biggest in world history with 700 bases around the world. Fourth, the concentrated corporate media that let those lies and lies continue. We're being lied to today about the success of the surge, about the number of Iraqi dead, even about the number of U.S. military casualties, which are now over 200,000. And we also have to focus on corporate government and the two corporate parties that allow this corporate government to continue. We need to challenge that system. How do we end this mindset? I'm going to put forward just 3 points. First, we need to create a new energy economy. That is the future. To replace the military-industrial complex, to replace big oil, to replace the profits from oil, we need a new energy economy. And in fact, we spent in 1 year in Iraq as much as it would take for us to equal the amount we need to invest in renewable energy to reduce CO2 to stop that global warming from coming along. Secondly, democratize the media. This is happening through the web, through the internet, through Amy Goodman, and hopefully through Mark Steiner's future radio show. Finally, democratize our democracy. Our democracy is ailing. It forces us to vote for people we don't believe in. We need to democratize our democracy. And it starts with peace voters knowing that peace is an issue that is life and death that we will vote on. We will not vote for Barbara Mikulski, who funds this war. We will not vote for Ben Cardin, who's on the Foreign Relations Committee and has done nothing to stop this war. We will vote for candidates who want to end war. And we start with Voters for Peace. That's an organization I'm running. These long signs up here, we have 10 of them for free. We have bumper stickers in back. I'm going to pass around the sign-up forms you get on our list. Get involved. Get active. We can make a difference. Join us together. We can end war. Make it something that's a piece of history, not a piece of the future. Thank you very much.
I personally don't know a whole lot about war. You know, I've never been to war. You know, I hear about the things on the news and the media and all of that. But I do feel as though I've been a big part of the war right here on the streets of Baltimore. And it resembles, you know, as I'm hearing people talk about, you know, what's going on over in Iraq, it's wars being fought right here in the streets and money ain't being put into the communities in order to stop these things going on. In the school system, money is not being put there so that people can have something else to do. So the youth are just being dumb, deaf, and blind by the media, telling them to vote for whatever it is that they want you to vote for, and all of that. I mean, it's really not in our best interest. It's really not standing up for ourselves because we're completely blinded. We're blinders are put on our faces by the education system, by the media, and by things of that nature. So we end up just falling into their systems, and as a result of that, we have to continue to have speak outs. We have to continue to fight for education, get locked up for education as the Eligible Project did just recently. Continue to advocate for it. That's the only thing that's going to get us out of this box that we are looking to be trapped in right now. With educated people in educated positions, then we wouldn't have to worry about a war in Iraq. We wouldn't have to worry about a war in these Baltimore streets. We wouldn't have to worry about communities fighting each other because we would have the sense of community through education that we wouldn't have to worry about all of that. So we got to continue to not only just speak out, we have to be able to step up and do something in our community. That's the call. In order for us to come in front of each other, that's good. That's good for recruitment and advertisement. But if you're not doing nothing outside these doors, then it's nothing. Unless you're out there really getting the message out and passing the word, then you're not doing anything. So make sure that you are passing it outside of these walls. If you don't tell anybody about what you learned here tonight, then you're just doing exactly the same thing as the classrooms would. So thank you.
It's like you guys are stuck with me. I'm here with the Pledge of Resistance Baltimore. We have been involved in resisting U.S. imperialism and the war before it started, and we do it through nonviolent civil resistance. We just recently did an action in the Senate gallery last week. We were the ghosts of the Iraq War, and we regularly risk arrest, and it's not the arrest that's important because that's what the police choose to do while we're exercising our First Amendment rights. It's the action itself. And you know, I want to pick up on something that Ryan from the Algebra Project said. Not everybody can do civil resistance, but I hope that some of you here tonight will be moved to do that. But if you do one thing every day, it's talk to somebody that may not agree with you, or talk to somebody that doesn't know what this war is really costing us, what this war is costing Baltimore. That's our mission. We have an opportunity here. I know that many of us here in this church have been working for a long time to end the war, and have been working for a lot longer than I have against United States imperialism in other countries. But things are changing in this country. People are finally waking up. A lot of them are waking up for the wrong reasons, but it's okay. They're waking up. It is up to us to give them the information that they need. And it's up to us, through our actions, to show what can be done. We have power in our hands.
Yes.
If there's one thing I've learned in the 5 years that I've been engaging in civil resistance, it is that we have the power. If each one of us really believes that, as I do, we can and will make a difference. I want to tell you something. Last week I went down to testify in Annapolis in favor of the utility re-regulation bill. I bet a lot of people here don't even know there is such a thing. And afterwards, Delegate Stooks, who's the sponsor, said to me, the only way this will change is for people to get out in the streets. That's pretty amazing from a delegate. And that is true. And I go back to, we have the power in our hands if we believe it and if we use it. And hopefully we won't be here next year on this same issue. We'll be out in the streets, but hopefully we will be out of Iraq. Thank you.
Next, I'll call up Bill Harvey, Universal Healthcare Action Network.
First, thanks very much to the organizers of this event, the people who put the grunt work in that makes it possible for us to come together tonight. And thank you all for coming out. It gives me heart to see a good crowd here. Now, I work with Marilyn Buchanan, Universal Healthcare Action Network. Our main purpose is to advocate for a single-payer health insurance system along the lines of what they have in Canada. So I've been to a couple of forums of this kind about the effects of military spending domestically, where I say we don't need the money for the healthcare system. If we had a single-payer system, everyone would be covered. to put everybody into a publicly funded system. One of our main slogans is everybody in, nobody out. By that we mean everybody in, nobody out. Everybody in the wealthiest. Everybody in the wealthiest society in human history should be able to get help if they're in distress. That could be done with the amount of money that we're already spending on health care. But we have a profit-driven system. I don't have time to go into it. I have 3 minutes. But we really don't need money that would be saved from military spending for health care in this country. However, we are stuck with the bizarre, profit-driven health care system that we have. So there are plenty of things. I thought I was going to hear a whole litany tonight of different ways that the military money could be spent, but there are plenty of things right here in the United States that this money could be spent on. In every state house in the country, there's a struggle every year about Medicaid programs and Medicaid-related programs. Plenty of money in that military budget and in Bush's tax cuts for the rich that could be going to Medicaid people all over the country. There's the S-chip debate that we've been treated to over the last year. One economist, Dean Baker, a guy that I have learned a lot from, estimates that 2 weeks spending on the war would cover the cost of S-chip. That's 2 weeks. We're now 260 weeks. So that's 1/130th of the war spending that could be spent on insuring more children. And finally, and most obviously for our purposes here tonight, is treatment of veterans. Okay, there are a lot of people here who know a lot more about it than I do, so I won't go into it. I can tell you this, though. Back in the 1970s, the veterans movement borrowed a slogan from the old people's movement. And that slogan is, use them once and throw them away. So I think we're facing a really serious decision as to what kind of world we want to live in, what values we want to underpin the kind of world we want. Do we want the values that say everybody in, that say every person's life is precious, or do we want a society that's based on the values of use them once and throw them away?
Diane Whitner, Chesapeake Citizens.
Good evening. I'm going to talk, hopefully not taking up too much time, about what an effective rage machine looks like from Baltimore to Baghdad and back again. Tonight around the country we are honoring all those whose lives have endured tragic setbacks due to the war. People from all walks of life, sorrowful people from Baltimore to Baghdad and back again. So I wish, first of all, to honor Baltimoreans and Baghdad citizens who are not receiving basic health services or decent schools or schooling at all, not to mention housing. People who do not have enough food or electricity here and in Baghdad, or clean indoor or outdoor spaces. People who are continually traumatized. People at home and abroad who have no hope because of the ever-destructive United States government-led American corporate empire. I have just been at an art meeting at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and I was with a few amazing people, and we decided to dedicate ourselves for 2 days to the idea of imagining an effective, amazing rage machine, and that sure seemed relevant to bring to you all here tonight. I want to take this idea then and link it to the war. So what constitutes an effective rage machine? Well, I happen to think, as you all must, that artists must be a part of such a machine. Artists must join and sometimes even lead rage machines if the machines themselves are to be effective. So I'm wearing a shirt that says, choose your weapons. And there's a pen, a guitar, and a paintbrush on this shirt. You all can't see it from behind this podium. Pardon me, want to look for you? What the hell, right? These are gentle tools, gentle weapons, and they're weapons of mass persuasion. To them, I would add a theater mask and either dancing shoes or bare feet, if that's how you prefer to move. At Chesapeake Citizens, we occasionally use subversive and humorous musical theater and movement in key and scary places of power to bring a brutal but necessary truth-telling energy or vibration to these locations. These events give us, and hopefully others, ideas and strength for future larger actions, and a much-needed laugh instead of our usual tears and rage and our feelings of awful impotence and fear. Also, while doing these ridiculous actions, using our silly costumes and our blunt expose language, we exert everyone's innate right to absolute freedom of expression anywhere and all the time. Especially, we believe this is important to do when we are standing inside our government buildings, because we do own them, after all, they are ours. Finally, we know we have been ignored on too many issues to name here, and as some people say, we have been disrespected. And so why not ignore and disrespect the discredited politicians, most of them anyway, back? So I see some politicians as bloated cartoon public figures, just like a 19th century Goya print, you know. I think of the former Soviet Union, and I think of dissident poets like Joseph Brodsky, or Velvet Revolution's playwright turned president from the former Czech Republic, Václav Havel. I think of the Mexican muralist, Diego Rivera, and of his sometime wife, Frida Kahlo's searing self-honesty and courage. And I have repeatedly read Howard Zinn's amazing little book called Artists in Times of War. There are so many ideas for all of us in that book. Anyway, since I believe that an effective rage machine uses all the arts, and sometimes with absurdity and humor, it was sure heartwarming to read today about all of the actions that took place in Washington, D.C. So now I'm going to cut my talk short, so I won't go beyond the time. I won't list them all for you here. We can find them all, luckily, in all of these alternative news sources people have already been talking about this evening. But in the next days, I sure will enjoy hearing about and reading about all these actions that took place today. And from this solidarity building, emerging street theater, I know that I will gain strength for the long-term fight. The fight on behalf of Baltimoreans and Baghdad citizens to end the war in a struggle that may well go beyond the election, although we sure hope it won't, right? And I know lots of you all in the room are going to work for that. Surely today's actions on this sad anniversary were only the beginning of a new phase of agitation in this country. And so here's to the continued growth of an American-made, anti-war and pro-social justice creative rage machine. Here's to you all.
These are the times that do try men's souls. I stand before you this evening as a member of Baltimore United for Peace and Justice, and also a member of Veterans for Peace, a former combat Marine, a hospital chaplain who specializes in burn and trauma. I am a survivor of Quezon. There are not too many of us who made it home from Quezon. I joined Baltimore United for Peace and Justice because it spoke to my heart. And I wish that at Quezon, somebody would have taken task to do what Baltimore United for Peace and Justice is doing for our soldiers and our veterans today. It took me 15 years or more to get it together, and I still struggle. In this city alone, we have veterans who are hurting. The war is still raging, friends. It's not over. So now we have a call to action, and we're asking that now you participate. Help Baltimore United for Peace and Justice to join with our other sister organizations to continue the fight so that the times do not triumph in souls. Can I get a witness to that? To help shape the politics of this time. And we're asking now that you will give wholeheartedly to help this organization do more to help veterans to say no to war. We are constantly in strategy meetings, the houses of government, talking with elected officials, trying to educate them about the cost of war. And you saw what happened this evening. We have a resolution from our city council. That's an important statement. So again, I ask that you give your very best. Baltimore United for Peace and Justice needs you right now. Let us give.
And while you give, Ms. Ellen Cherry will give us some selections.
It was interesting to listen to speakers talk about the environmental impact that we could be spending money on alternative fuel research. I used to live in a town called New Orleans, which is, for some reason, founded in a bathtub. But coming to Baltimore, you realize that New Orleans had a natural disaster, and their city is like that. Baltimore hasn't had a natural disaster, and our city is like this, especially our schools. So I'm going to sing you a song about the environment. And while we're thinking about peace, let's all change our light bulbs to CFL tonight. Or just turn them off. Settle down. I flew to Mexico, I didn't write a word. I walked out on the water, I forgot I was a bird. I returned, they said, well, have you heard the news of your hometown? I said, no. Telephone, never learned so well to leave well enough alone. I moved water place to place. I've made a mark that I can't lose. I've been so bored living fast and learning too slow. I guess so. So I was trying to think of, all my songs are sad, so I was like, I want to play a happy song. This is kind of a weird song about a dream, going backwards, and I think a lot of us feel like we wish this was a dream of 5 years, that we could go backwards. So I told people I was coming to this tonight, and I put it on my website, and I was like, if you can't come, at least just spend an hour thinking about what it would be like. Because I'm kind of a metaphysicist that way. I think we can affect change with energy. So, if you don't feel like listening, that's fine. Just listen to the melody and let your mind wander to a peaceful time. March 18th, 2003, right?
My name is Jim Baldridge. Perhaps you've heard this before. Listen. These are the times to try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he stands by it now. Deserves the love and thanks of men and women. I know you've heard it before. In fact, you heard Pierre say part of that a little while ago. But that was written by Thomas Paine and published in his The Crisis in December of 1776, 231 years ago. Vietnam Veterans Against the War was founded in 1967. I was halfway through a four-year enlistment at the time. I wasn't a vet yet. I knew about the GI resistance movement because I was inspired by it. I was doing it too. About 4 years later, Vietnam Veterans Against the War held their Winter Soldiers investigations hearings in Detroit. I'd been out of the service about 14 months by that time. Winter Soldier was so named because they needed to differentiate themselves from the summer soldiers and the sunshine patriots who supported the Vietnam War. VVAW had to tell the American people things that were happening in Vietnam that were not being told by the government, the military hierarchy, or the mainstream media. I was in and out of the service before Winter Soldier. I enlisted in September '65, and in January '66 I reported for duty. John Kerry didn't invent that phrase 4 years ago. He said it back in the '60s when he did report for duty. So did John McCain. So did I. So did Pierre. So did Bill Harvey, the tall guy who spoke for UCAN. I spent 2 tours in Iceland, and it turns out that Bill Harvey was in Iceland at the same time I was. I think when I was being subversive, he was shooting hoops. The Republicans and the swift voters made fun of Kerry 4 years ago. But you know, George W. Bush reported for duty too, when he was in the Guard back in the '60s. The problem was that he didn't finish his duty. This was exactly what Thomas Paine meant about 200 years before that, when he wrote Summer Soldier, Sunshine Patriot in the Crisis. People in combat, men and women, are affected, profoundly affected, by what they see and hear, what they do. They see the contradictions between the honor of serving their country and what the politicians, the generals, the admirals send them to do, ask them to do, expect them to do, including the unspoken things. Advance your calendar now forward from the Vietnam War era to July of 2004. They had a resource in 2004 that we didn't have in 1967. Thousands of organized anti-war veterans to help them add their voices to oppose the Iraq War. Members of VFP and VVAW met with these new vets and helped them set up a new organization, Iraq Vets Against the War. Has a nice ring to it, IVAW, rhymes with VVAW. It came as no surprise that IVAW determined that it was important for them to do now what VVAW did in 1971, organize and conduct their own version of Winter Soldier investigations hearings. Those hearings were held last week. We seem to have moved through the past 50 or so years in a circle. We have come full circle, as it were. It's a circle that vets of these conflicts, of all conflicts, would not have wanted to see come again in their lifetimes, our lifetimes, ever again. Wars have been resisted and opposed by a great many constituencies over the years. The politicians fund the machinery of war, the military operates that machinery, from commanding machines of war to move forward in battle to controlling the direction and speed of the wheels. Veterans who oppose these wars were the cogs in those gears of the war machines, and were those who care for and repair those cogs and those machines. These things give vets an active duty resistance to the war a unique voice. They make a different kind of contribution to the anti-war movement. There are those who say that the soldiers and Marines, the medics and support troops, are guilty. By not refusing the orders of the generals and the admirals, they are as guilty as the brass of waging illegal war on a country far away. But soldiers who resist won't tell you that. They tell of being misled and lied to in order to get them to participate in this war. It was done to me and others of my generation 40 years ago. I volunteered because I was told it was the right thing to do. I found out otherwise, and voluntarily became an anti-war activist while I was still in. Others back then were drafted, many of them, and so they didn't come to battle willingly, but they sure knew it was a bad deal. They figured out, just as many of us volunteers did, that the important thing became the struggle to end the war. Today, March 19th, is an international day of protest. Dozens of countries all over the world, Asia, Europe, South America, Africa, Middle East, all over, not just the U.S., are protesting the Iraq War and demanding an end to it. The 6th year of the Iraq War begins tomorrow.
When my son was a Marine Corporal, Nick Jolkowski, was being deployed, he was told that the deployment would last no more than 7 months because after 7 months, they lose combat effectiveness. So what happened? How have things changed? Remember when Governor Sebelius of Kansas didn't have any National Guard troops to help out during the floods in Kansas because they had been deployed to Iraq? The National Guard is supposed to be here to protect the people at home. I learned that in elementary school. They're the outgrowth of the colonial militias. Governor Sebelius certainly needed the troops at home. And what about the troops themselves? I know that they believe in serving their country and they do their jobs well. But at what cost? They need to come home too. America needs its troops in America, and the troops need to be in America. We need to bring them home. My family and I have been hurting since November 14th, 2004, when we lost my son, who was a Marine sniper in Fallujah. This makes me a member. Well, this is my beliefs make me a member of Gold Star Families Speak Out. Nick's niece, my granddaughter Madeline, who was born a month before Nick was killed, was going around their house one day and saw some pictures of Nick, photographs, and she said to her mother, "When is Uncle Nicky coming to my house?" How do you explain the concept of never to a 3-year-old? How do you explain it to me, to my family, to the families of the other people who have been killed, to Nick's friends? How do you explain it to the almost 4,000 other American families, to the tens of thousands of Iraqi families who have lost loved ones? They're hurting also. We Gold Star families want our troops, our Nikki, our David, our Ken, our Jennifer, our Alex, and on and on and on to come home, but they never will. And what a loss it is to America.
I'd like to mention that as a member of Veterans for Peace and Vietnam Veterans Against the War, both of these organizations are tax exempt. They're non-profit organizations. They're nonpartisan. So any remarks I made earlier about the current occupant were my own. But these things do not mean that we are without opinions, nor does it mean we will not fight for our opinions. So if you are a veteran, or if you support any of our veterans, join Veterans for Peace. If you're a Vietnamese or a vet, join VVAW. If you have served since 9/11, join IVAW. I also like to point out that one of the veterans here that I didn't mention before has a book that was published last year. Her name was Madeline Misko. She was a burn unit nurse at Brooks Army Medical Center in Texas during the Vietnam War. And she has her book in the back. Max is holding one so you can see what it looks like. And Madeline is sitting right back there. And you can talk to her about these books. I highly recommend it. It's a very good book. Trey Kindler was in the Navy from 1994 to 2003. When he got out as a CO in 2003, he joined the Navy and saw the world, but also saw that he couldn't accept the military requirement that he put the Navy before his faith. Taking such a position is extraordinarily difficult. It sets you apart from everyone else. Your comrades in arms look at you differently. They stay apart from you because they don't want to catch the trouble you're catching from the grass. And some of you consider you a pariah or a traitor. It's very difficult. So Trey Kindler here.
thinking about what to say tonight. It's been 5 years. We think about, you know, these folks up here, especially you, that gave up your son. And I'm so sorry. And for everybody else, last weekend we had Winter Soldier down in Silver Spring. And I've talked to this gentleman before about one of the Gold Star families, the father that lost his son. I spoke with him, and he was the most humble person I'd ever met in my life. And contrary to what you might think of Texans, with the current occupant of the White House, us Texans can be pretty humble folks, and this guy blew us all out of the water. He was just the most amazing person to talk to. And I'm sorry, but there's just been too much killing. You gotta remember, it's not just statistics. Whether it's 30,000, stupidly small number that George Bush told us however many moons ago, or whether it's 1.2 million when we're talking about Iraqis who died. When we look at the official number on the DoD website with the 3,991 American troops who've died and the 145 who've come back and committed suicide on top of that, or the approximately 30,000 Iraqi troops. It's not just statistics. Every one of these people was somebody's son or daughter or mother or father, and they're all God's children. No matter what God we worship, they're all God's children. And I can't, my wife and I were talking about it. She's active duty and also a member of IVA. She's the brave one, not me. I've been out for a long time, so it's one thing for me to do it, but for her as an active duty member down at Fort Meade, we were talking about it, and this past week it really changed us. And we didn't sit in on all of the testimony because we couldn't. There was just too much. You know, we're closer to it than most folks, and the gentleman from the Algebra Project, I don't know if he's still here, but he was apologizing for not, I don't know if he was apologizing, but he was talking about how he didn't know war. That's okay. I don't want you to know about it. It's the 5th anniversary of Iraq, but let's not forget Afghanistan. We've lost too many people over there. And if you add up the number of people that we've killed or have been killed, the number is anywhere from 30 to 50,000 people. And that's in Afghanistan. Think about that. That's a lot of people. We have a chapter at Fort Meade of Iraq Veterans Against the War, with the second active duty chapter. For those of y'all who don't know, where it doesn't ring a bell, we have the National Security Agency on base. So you can imagine what that's like. And none of our members on base have gone to Iraq. I didn't go to Iraq. As Jim said, I was a conscientious objector. We all have our different reasons. But we still believe that it's illegal and immoral, and none of us are going to be a part of it. But we have 4 active duty chapters now, and this has all been within the last 10 months. We've added a couple of active duty chapters just in the last few months at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and the largest Army base in the world at Fort Hood, Texas. And the wonderful gentleman who started that actually joined IVAW while he was in Iraq. And this past weekend we were told that folks had received emails from all over the world. We received an email from, I believe it was a sergeant, but somebody in the Army in Baghdad. He says, I haven't had a chance to go over all of your testimony, but I believe in what you're talking about, and if you need any help, let me know. And I have 8 other members of my unit who are ready to back me up too. That's 9 folks in one small unit in Baghdad. story told of a bunch of soldiers sitting in a rec room in California that were watching the testimony online. And there was anywhere from 15 to 20 soldiers watching it, and then the sergeant found out and went in and unplugged it and made them all, ordered them not to watch it anymore. So knowing military folks like I do, they probably just went back to their rooms and watched it online. I hope so. I think so. We were actually, my wife was sent an email by an active duty spouse in Japan that we knew. We knew her very well. And she says, I don't know if I support what you're doing or not, but it's good that you're doing something. And that's exactly who we want to talk to. It's one thing to preach to the choir, but it's something else altogether when we can talk to somebody that we don't agree with or that don't agree with us. I'll just say this, and I think I can say this for most members of IVAW, we're nothing more than anybody else that's trying to fight this war. We just have a different take on it, that's all. But we're nothing better, nothing worse. And we're absolutely beholden to the folks who followed before us with VVAW and with Veterans for Peace. I pray to God we don't have to do the same thing with whatever insert country here veterans against the war. I hope not. But if so, then we'll do, I hope we do half as good a job as VVAW and VFP has done for us in IVAW. And I have to say, since I'm up here in Baltimore, I have to thank our allies that have helped us out at Fort Meeting, specifically the Baltimore chapter of the ISO and the Baltimore chapter of VFP and Ryan Harvey has been phenomenal. The folks at Red Emma's have rolled out everything they could to help us out. And there's so many more people that have to, and I apologize, I couldn't list all the names of those people specifically. I want to make sure I mention. But in closing, I'm constantly asked what people can do to help us, because we're here to remember the 5th anniversary of the war in Iraq, but we've also talked about ways we can end this damn thing. And I'm constantly asked what people can do to help, not just us, but in general. And if you want to talk about IVAW specifically, I will say that any help that we get is appreciated. The help I think we need the most is ideas and people telling us about their experiences and where they've gone wrong, where they've gone right, things that have worked for them, things that have not worked for them. But I think just in general, when you think about things you want to do, find your comfortable spot and say, okay, this is what I can do that's comfortable. Okay, I don't think I can get arrested, but I can do this or I can do this. Find your comfortable spot and then push it a little bit more every day. That's what we've been doing within IVAW, and I know a lot of other folks who've thankfully never been associated with war. So push it every day. Push yourself just a little bit more every day. It was something we were taught in the military, and for all the messed up things we were taught, that's one thing that I think is really good. And so let's remember everybody and keep each other, give each other ideas, and just remember all the death and destruction that's happened already, and hopefully we can end this thing soon, if not tomorrow.
In honor of U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Jeffrey Lucy. The title of the poem is Casualty of War Uncounted. Jeffrey is not counted among the Iraq war dead, but he did die. He saw things. Camel spiders in his room, in his parents' house. He used a flashlight to search for them under his bed. Jeffrey told Mom and Dad he was ordered to kill 2 Iraqi prisoners. He wore their dog tags until Christmas 2003. When he ripped them off, threw them at his sister, called himself a murderer. Jeffrey stayed in his room, watched TV, drank booze, feared the stigma that accompanies mental health treatment. Mom and Dad had him involuntarily committed. The Veterans Hospital released him 3 days later, didn't know what to do for him. Jeffrey asked his father if he could sit in his lap. They rocked for 45 minutes in silence. Jeffrey had gone to his last place of refuge. The next morning, his father raced to the cellar after finding Jeff's dog tags laid out on his bed. Jeffrey was dead. A garden hose double looped around his neck. Dear Mom and Dad, I cannot express my apologies in words for the pain I have caused you, but I beg you for your forgiveness. I want you to know that I loved you both and still do, but the pain of life was too much for me to deal with. The last part of that poem is Jeffrey Lucy's suicide note verbatim. That's it.